as we start this evening, and we want to move this evening along. We want it to be fast-paced for you, so that there's a lot of information coming your way. I think that's better than staying too long on one topic. So hopefully you'll be able to keep up. Even as I think about tonight, I think about the time I lived in Kansas many years ago. Anybody from Kansas? Anybody? Yeah, okay, good. But we moved from Philadelphia to Kansas. That was a shock, but that was my first parish. I loved it out there, big sky, wonderful people. But it's a different culture, and I had to learn how to read Louis L'Amour. Anybody Louis L'Amour readers? Western, right? Great. And his one statement, you've heard many reiterations of this in other places, I'm sure. But he said, there will come a time when you believe everything is finished. That will be the beginning. Pembroke Rising. That's what this is. So what we're going to do tonight is just give you a short introduction, and then we will introduce some people to you, and then we'll move into our first speakers. We want to begin with a pledge to the allegiance. Before you stand up, Lisa Adams is going to lead us in that, but also our friends from Motherlode, who are a grassroots group active in Hanover. They're going to come forward with Lisa, and they're going to lead us into the Pledge of Allegiance.
We pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'm going to ask that you remain standing. Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it. I'm going to ask Rob Killefer to come forward. Pastor Killefer is a pastor who lives in Bryantville section of our town. Long-time pastor on the South Shore, many years in Braintree, and now continuing to serve in many different capacities, including pastoring. So Rob Killefer is going to lead us in a word of prayer as we start.
Let's pray. Our God and Father, we thank you for this evening, for this occasion, for those who are standing for the Constitution, for our chartered liberties, for those who have taken responsibility for good citizenship. And Lord, I pray that you would guide our conversations, guide our thoughts, guide our actions, and may Pembroke Rising become a blessing for this community. In the strong name of Jesus, amen.
Amen. Please be seated. Even as we begin this evening, we have some special guests. I'll work through this real quick. If you can, we have some candidates here. This is not a political event, by the way. This is a Pembroke Rising event. And this is a nonpartisan movement that's involved with unenrolled Republicans, Democrats, whoever are called to the issues that are being recognized and identified here in Pembroke. We gather around those. We are not a party movement. Is that me? Should be. No, it's not me. We're not a party movement, but obviously political candidates are part of our scene. We have some with us tonight. They're not going to have an opportunity to speak, but they will have an opportunity to network with you. So I want to just say, if you're running for local office, just stand up, give us your name and what office you're running for real quick. There we go, over there.
So, Carrie McRae, and I'm running for State Senate.
Okay, over here.
Pembroke Board of Health.
Give us that name again.
Maureen, J.C.
Maureen. Okay, very good. Oh, that.
I just don't have a chair.
Melissa.
Melissa Pinnetti, Hanson Board of Health.
Very good.
Ken Sweezy, State Rep of 6 Plymouth.
Very good. Anybody?
Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm Jamie Redoler, and I'm running for Board of Health in Abington.
Very good.
Gary Eunice, State Senate.
Very good. Yes.
Ian Ray, Board of Selectmen in Hanson.
Very
Rayla Campbell, running for Secretary of State.
Yeah, Don.
Donnie Palmer, U.S. Congress.
And let me see, back there, somewhere back there.
Stephen Ciciotti, Selectman.
Anyone else? Yes.
Colleen Regan, Board of Health.
Okay, here's now, this is what Pembroke Rising is all about. Is about seeing opportunities that we are the solution to, not someone else. We are the solution, and knowing the opportunities that we can move into to make a difference where we live, and it can be done. Now, we want to move quickly in tonight. We have several people speaking for you tonight. I'll introduce them as we transition from speaker to speaker. First, we'll have Vincent Cogliano, who's a former selectman here in our area, a longtime cheerleader for Pembroke, the fellow who led point guard for the initiative to leave the Silver Lake School District and have Pembroke Senior High as our own. That was much of Vince's legacy. And he wants to speak to us tonight about is critical race theory in the schools? What's the answer to that? Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And Vince wants to take an opportunity to share that with you. And then he's going to interview very quickly Carrie McRae, who knows what it's like to identify it and then to pay the price for recognizing that it exists. So, Vince, you're on.
Thank you, Don. And thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. I'm here to welcome you to the revolution. We're all a little late, by the way, to this revolution. About 60 years late. I know. Why didn't anyone tell us about this revolution? And how did it ever get to Pembroke? This glorious revolution started with the sex, drugs, and rock and roll of the 1960s. It was started by a lot of college professors. Now, we largely ignored this revolution, but over the years, they never stopped fighting this revolution. They think of themselves as protectors of democracy. But give them a choice between that communist-loving killer, Che Guevara, and the freedom-loving capitalist, Ronald Reagan, and they'll choose Che every time. They still idolize Fidel Castro. He gave his people free health care and free college. To get it, all the people of Cuba had to do was to give up their freedom. And just listen to today's heroes of the left. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the bird-brained bartender. And that socialist, Bernie Sanders. They want to give us free health care and free education too. They believe that America is a deeply racist country and that capitalism is unfair. They also believe if the only way is to end racism and this economic unfairness is to adopt Marxist socialism, then so be it. And as sad as it is, a lot of people support them, just like they supported Fidel. And like so many misguided revolutions, this one is built on lies. They lie about the founders of our country. They lie about our history. They say the Constitution is unfair because it was written by white men, written to protect white men, written to help them stay in power forever. It was written in a way that made racism systemic and allowed evil white men to massacre indigenous people. And they say that all of our laws are unfair too. This is the focal point of their revolution. This is their big lie. This is the law school debate topic they call critical race theory. They say that we're crazy when we say that they're teaching it in our schools. It's only being debated in law schools, they say. It's only an academic exercise, they say. They're in constant states of denial. They deny they're teaching CRT. They deny that they'll ever teach it. They say that they're only teaching history. So what are we worried about? Why are we so afraid? Well, we're afraid because They say the only cure for racism is to end capitalism and adopt Marxist socialism. And that comes directly from the current leader of their revolution, a guy named Ibram X. Kendi. Now he's a darling of the mainstream media, and he's a frequent guest on network television. He's never challenged when he claims that all white people are racist. He's never asked about his support for Marxist socialism. Why is that? His books are featured on the Pembroke High School Social Justice website and on the reading list at the Pembroke Public Library. And we thought that we were safe from this revolution because it would never get to Pembroke. But we were wrong, because one day we wake up to hear members of our town select board lecturing us about our racism, telling us that we're not welcoming to minorities and marginalized people. If we weren't so racist, more minorities would live here. And we wonder, what's this all about? Are they really talking about our town? Then they tell us they're going to start a DEI committee. We really need it, they say. This Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee will educate us about our racism and our oppression. They'll teach people how to admit to their racism and how to deal with it. And the proof of that racism? Well, Pembroke is largely a white community. Do you need any more proof than that? Town meeting voted against the DEI committee, but the select board doesn't seem to care about the will of the people, so they approved it. And after town meeting, some people were offended by the tone of the debate. Offended by the tone? What about the substance? I think we have a right to be offended when we're accused of being racist when we're not. Don't you? Then we're told that racism is a part of our past, and this DEI committee will help make up for past injustices. Does that make any sense at all? I think we've let them get away with this nonsense for way too long. It's about time we raised our voices. It's about time we pushed back on their lies. It's about time we recognize this movement for what it really is. A few weeks ago, our brand new DEI committee held its first meeting. And they agreed that they need to look at the metrics. Now, DEI committees, they always look at the metrics. Most of our leaders are white. Most of our police and fire department and other town departments are white. Most of our teachers in our schools are white. It doesn't get much worse than that, does it? And the reason is obvious. It's our racism that keeps minorities away from Pembroke. They say there must be equity. Now, if you ask them to define equity, they duck and dodge the question. But we know it has something to do with equality of outcome, as opposed to equality of opportunity. We also know that they think the concept of a meritocracy is very unfair. Ibram X. Kendi and his followers believe in equality of outcome. It doesn't matter that the reasons we don't have more minorities living in Pembroke are far too complex to be solved by simple solutions. But simple is all they understand, and complex pathologies don't do well in revolutions. Stick to the slogans. America is racist. Capitalism is unfair. America must change. Now, DEI committees seem to all follow the same all too familiar script. First, they tell you you're racist. Then they want to educate you. And then they say that we'll need a full-time DEI director for our town at a very high salary. That's the way it always goes. And then it won't be long before this DEI committee will demand that all town employees must be educated. It's already mandated that all town department heads must be members of the DEI committee, and they are. This is all part of the script they follow. Department heads need to be coerced into buying into the ideology, and if they don't, they're racist. Fear and coercion, this is the power of DEI. It's like the French Revolution, without the guillotine, and Robespierre, of course. But their guillotine is when they call your employer and try to get you fired, or to call you racist and try to ruin your reputation. Supporters of their ideology have already done this in Pembroke. Now, this training that they want to do will educate town employees about their unconscious bias and white privilege and white fragility. They'll be taught to acknowledge their racism and to denounce it, and to become what Ibram Kendi calls an anti-racist. They'll be taught that race is everything. Nothing else matters. And they must reject the colorblind society of Dr. Martin Luther King. They say he was a tool of the white man. They've already started to invade our schools with their social justice website. Now, the Anti-Defamation League is a powerful force at Pembroke High School. The ADL has a handbook they give to students to help train them. It's racist. We don't know if they're using this racist ADL handbook yet in Pembroke to train students. Nobody will talk about it. But we know the ADL is there, and we know that they're an organization that uses children to spread the revolution. We know their destructive message is hidden behind a phony anti-bullying campaign. We also know that the school website has sections labeled resources for parents, resources for teachers, and resources for students. We're told that some school officials are looking into the website to try to find anything that could be wrong with it. Apparently, nothing has been found. Now that's laughable. It would be much harder to find any people or books or resources on that site that don't teach hate. Hate for police officers, hate for capitalism, and hate for America. The fact is, no one's really looking, and nobody really cares. There's a college professor they use as the main resource for parents on this site. Her name is Jennifer Harvey. She's a very troubled woman. She hates America, she hates capitalism, and she especially hates white people. Now, this professor wants to teach the children, the parents rather, how to talk to their children about their whiteness. She wants parents to know how to explain to their children that all white people are racist. She wants America to give indigenous people their own country. She says that's only fair. She wants to transfer all of the wealth of white people to minorities. She wants children to feel guilty about being white. This is the Pembroke High School resource for parents. Then there's the resource for teachers, a radical feminist Marxist professor at Georgia State University. She's written curriculum for many schools, including the New York City school system. She believes that children must be radicalized to fight for social justice. I guess reading and writing and math and science just don't cut it anymore. She wants our schools to train more revolutionaries. She's also a big advocate for culturally appropriate learning. Now, this woman tells so many lies that it's impossible to keep count. She's the resource for teachers at Pembroke High School. And don't forget the reference and resources for students. Students are directed to a website in Brookline, Massachusetts. This website was cited in a report written for the U.S. Department of Education. It was recognized as one of the most malevolent sites on the internet. It's also filled with lies. Just the place we should be sending our kids to learn about history and social justice. And then the school brought in 2 consultants to talk to everyone about racism. One of them says that if you have 2 students in your class, one white and one black, you must ignore the white child and only teach the black student. The other consultant says there are only 2 kinds of people in America, the oppressors and the oppressed. He says if you're white, you must be the oppressor. Really? And then we're going to do a survey at Pembroke in the 6th grade of our 3 elementary schools. The COVID pandemic caused it to be delayed. I don't know if it's been done yet. Nobody seems to know. They call it a culturally appropriate scorecard, and it's sweeping across America faster than a new COVID variant. The proponents of this lunacy say that math and science shouldn't be taught as objective subjects. They say that minorities and indigenous peoples see math and science as something metaphysical. They say math and science should be subjective. I don't know about you, but this sounds like a crazy idea to me. And by the way, no school ever gets a passing grade on this culturally appropriate scorecard. But you already knew that, didn't you? And when your school fails this little test, guess what happens next? They cure the problem by teaching critical race theory, but you knew that too. And who are the primary writers of this crazy scorecard they want to use in Pembroke? The scorecard was written by two openly Marxist professors. Does that surprise you? We're told that no critical race theory is officially being taught in Pembroke schools. And we want to believe that. We're told that members of our school committee and the administration won't ever let that happen. We're told that only a few teachers force students to read books that advocate for this Marxist ideology. But we see the social justice website. We see the lies and the hate on this site. And we have to ask, why is this anti-American website even there? And if people are turning their backs on this hateful site, why should we believe them when they say they won't crumble in the face of pressure from the DEI committee to begin officially teaching critical race theory? We're here tonight to support the efforts of people who don't want to see this destructive and false ideology forced on the children of our town, or anyone else either. We'll support select board members, school committee members, administrators, teachers, and students who have the courage to stand up to those who do support it. We're here to support all town employees who may feel threatened by this ideology. No one denies that there was racism in America. There still is. But it's not widespread and it's not systemic. Only a liar, a coward, or a fool would say that. America has made more progress in race relations than any country in the world. We've enacted more laws against racism than any other country. And more people reject racism in America than any country on the planet. We still have work to do. Because we've just demonstrated a willingness to make the progress, we will do that too. Yet the false accusations keep coming, even from our president. And the worst part of it is that the things being said are meant to divide us. And because of these lies, the mistrust between races is getting worse. Does that surprise anyone? If you're black and constantly hear that all white people are racist, would you ever want to talk to them? If you're constantly attacked as being racist, does that make you want to reach out and communicate with people who are different? Of course it doesn't. Common sense tells us that the only thing that can end racism is communication. And with every lie they tell, there's less communication. And we all need to be asking the question, why would anyone want to do that? Why do they want to shut down the very thing that can do the most to end racism? The only conclusion you can draw is that they support and encourage division and hate. But remember, don't get angry and don't raise your voices. It's offensive to some people. Sit by and ignore what's happening. Maybe it'll go away if we just give in and accept it. Accept your guilt and do what you're told. I can't do that, and you can't either. And that's a good thing. And this is where their terrible script gets a much-needed rewrite. Your presence here tonight says that you're standing up against the division and hate that's seeping into our town. You're saying that it's time to go back to the concept of a colorblind society, the one Dr. King preached to us about. You're saying that you reject any and all movements meant to divide us. America is being pulled in two directions when it comes to race and gender. The winner will decide the future of our town and our country. I'll put my faith in you. I'll stand with people of all races and creeds who love America, people who don't use race or gender as a weapon or a political tool. We're here tonight to defeat hatred of any kind. We're here to defeat ideologies that will take away our freedom, our flag, and our country. And we aren't going away. They want us to go away, but we're not. And be aware that they'll call us terrible names just because we're standing up to them. Because we stand firm against people who hate America and those who teach hate. And we stand behind and defend anyone who's being attacked because of the color of their skin, no matter what that color is. We're here because we care. We care about this town, and we care about our country. And because of you, we will prevail. The good people of Pembroke will prevail, and America will prevail too. Woo! I want to introduce Carrie McRae now because she has dealt firsthand with what's going on. She is proof positive that free speech is under attack in America. For stating her opinions, she was fired from her teaching job in Hanover. She's been the target also now of a recall from her position as a school board member in Bourne. Now here's what she said that got her into trouble. So pretty much the reason I ran for school board and the reason I'm taking on this responsibility is to ensure that students, at least in our town, are not being taught critical race theory, that they're not being taught that the country was built on racism, so that they're not being taught that they can choose whether or not that they're a boy or a girl. Now, Judicial Watch filed a civil rights lawsuit in federal court on her behalf. We'll be watching. But my bet is that the court will uphold her right to speak her mind. And frankly, when I looked at the things she said that she got fired for, I don't know how they could, you know, it's so silly that giving an opinion like you don't want your children to be taught hate and division and anti-American propaganda, that's a contentious issue now with some people in our country and in our towns. Look what's happening here. Look what's happening in Plymouth, Hanover, and so many other communities on the South Shore. And Carrie is proof positive that speaking your mind is a dangerous proposition these days, and it's not a good thing at all. So I just wanted to ask a couple of questions if I could. So what you said sounded very reasonable to me, and I'm sure to a lot of people here. Were you surprised at the reaction of the people at Hanover High School?
I was surprised about being fired, obviously. I was a little surprised, but I think based on what's going on in the country, you know, as soon as we speak up against things, we're going to get pushback. I just didn't think it was going to be that severe. So.
Now, I had some people from Hanover say to me tonight here that they didn't think Hanover was like that. I mean, they thought that Hanover was a town that would reject this type of thing. It must have changed. I mean, things have changed obviously there.
I think that's the key. I was just thinking about this today, that if I was fired because I said that those types of things shouldn't happen in our schools, I think that makes everybody step back and think, well, wait a minute. Does that mean that it is then happening in the schools? And I think, unfortunately, it is.
What about if you want, as a parent, to address these issues, how do you do it in your town without being called a racist?
You can't.
Well, I think, I almost look at it like maybe just to do baby steps, right? To maybe ask the questions without, if you're going to ask the questions because you know what the answers are, I mean, that's the reason why you're asking the question, right? So I think that the first steps would probably be, if you see something that's in the classroom that's being taught, your child comes home with it and you're like, what is this? You know, maybe send an email, don't make a phone call, send an email, then it's in writing, asking, you know, I just had some questions about, you know, what the, maybe the story behind this project was, or something like that. And then if you don't get a good response, or maybe you get no response, then kind of move up the chain.
One thing I've found is that officials in the town and administrators at the schools really have their answers down pat on how to keep you at arm's length.
Yep.
You found the same thing?
Absolutely.
I mean,
Absolutely.
where do they get I mean, they all say the same things. Oh, we're not doing that we would never do that.
Well, they're getting it from the programs that we're buying in our towns.
Okay.
So it tells you, you're going to have to deal with this. here's your answer. You're gonna have to deal with this question, here's your answer. You know, they're training them on how to effectively push the narrative, right? So as they have the answers for everything that we're gonna push back against.
But the answers are all canned. If you're ever in the situation, you sit there and you go, this person is actually telling me something that I know is bullshit. They know it's bullshit.
You said it, not me.
But we're supposed to just say, oh, thank you, and I'll be on my way now. Because that's really what they want you to do, is go away and don't bother them because you don't know anything about education.
It is good to go on the radio too. That really gets them excited. If you've gotten to that point that you're going to the superintendent and you're getting pushback at that point now, I say just go to the radio, right? And then they'll probably listen a little bit better to you. You might not get the same result that you want, but then they'll know that you're not going to be quiet and you're going to keep fighting for it.
Now, so if you have something like the website that I want taken down, how do you do that? Can you do it?
Well, you could start by recalling. It can be done.
Well, you know that.
Yeah, yes.
How
It
do you-
doesn't mean it's gonna be successful,
Right.
just saying. But, you know, that's a way to do it, you know, get these people out of their seats.
Well-
Run, there's a lot of people here that are running for, you know, Board of Selectmen, a lot of people running for, I heard what, the Health Department?
Health, yeah.
Board of Health.
Right.
I mean, anybody that said, oh, I'm here to run for Board of Health, did you ever think 2 years ago, you know what, I think I'm gonna run for the Board of Health? Probably not. No, right, exactly. So that's another way to make change as, you know, grassroots get involved.
Well, I know that, and I also know this about you, and I'm going to wrap it up, John. I know you want me to get off of here.
It's
He's
okay,
like-
I'm not gonna use all my time, so.
But just let me just say that you have a good attitude about the recall that you're under.
You do.
Tell people about that.
So, well, it took them about 48 days to get 250 people, registered voters, to say, yes, we want her recalled. Now they have 45 days to get 1,487. So, I'm really not too concerned.
But they have a right to do it.
They do, absolutely, it's a
And-
process.
and as
I respect
Yeah,
it.
and I actually think it will do good. This recall should get people energized in the town of Bourne, and it should. And people should come out to support it. Recalls are a part of political life.
Absolutely.
They're a good thing.
Yep.
Politicians who know they're safe all the time won't listen to the voters. They have no reason to.
That's right.
It's a hard thing to wait for 3 years or however long it takes
Absolutely.
sometimes to have it done. So, thank you, Carrie.
Yeah, thank
Good
you.
luck.
Thank you.
You'll give them a ring.
What a story. Thank you, Carrie. Lots going on in the trenches. People are paying the price, but they're standing strong. One of those people is Kim Emberg. I had to have her here tonight. Some of you are aware that a couple of years ago, was it 2 years ago now?
Almost exactly.
Something extraordinary happened. A select board member, 2 of them got recalled in Kingston. And Kim was was key person in leading that effort. And as you know, here in Pembroke, we'll go over this later on, our bylaws make it virtually impossible to recall someone. Virtually impossible. There's a reason behind that. No fear. No fear. We want to change that here in Pembroke. And so we're actually doing a petition to change the recall bylaws of Pembroke. Kim is an expert in this thing. She's got a story to tell. I know the time pressure's here, but I could listen to Kim forever. We won't do tonight forever, but I could listen to her forever. It's quite a story. Kim, come forward and tell us your story.
Nobody wants to hear it. So as I read this, I just want to be clear, he has no idea what I'm going to say. So if it seems like we planned what he said with what I said, we didn't. So as he mentioned, my name is Kimberly Emberg. I'm the chairman of the Board of Selectmen in Kingston. When I think about government officials, okay, so no offense to anyone who's here who's a government official, I think of people who've been involved a really long time in their communities. They've made a name for themselves, they've volunteered, they've served on boards, they've done a lot, right? So people know who they are. They have a reputation maybe, one way or the other. The reason, in most cases, is that in Massachusetts, incumbents typically win. In fact, Mississippi is the only state with less legislative turnover than we do. And if you thought odds were bad to unseat an incumbent, with a recall, the odds are even worse. Sorry, it will get better. Recalls are difficult, and they're meant to be. I realize that statement may bring some eye rolls given that I'm an elected official currently, but I say that as a voter. We don't want recalls to be easy, because if they were too easy, every time someone disliked someone for something, we'd be in the voting booths every time we turned around. Recalls shouldn't be impossible either. They should be nearly impossible though. The odds have to be long, but not insurmountable. As political stories go, mine is fairly unique as I only moved to Kingston in 2017, after my father-in-law's untimely passing. I wasn't involved in local politics in any capacity. And I wasn't involved pretty much anywhere. I moved here, my husband knew where things were, I didn't even know where to get balloons for my son's birthday. Everyone just assumed I knew, because he knew. I didn't know anyone. So I first got involved in January of 2020 after an incident between a town employee and an elected official. And what occurred, I believed, should have been handled differently. The situation was a catalyst for many, but as time went on, other concerns and issues were brought to light, excuse me, and the incident I mentioned turned out to be merely a drop in the bucket. While residents were holding signs and posting complaints on social media, the selectmen of the time struggled to maintain order. Before long, public comment was no longer permitted at selectmen's meetings. And for many, that was the match that lit the recalls. On the first day, we had the recall petitions from the town clerk, and we were able to start collecting signatures. I set up a table in front of the library and posted on social media I'd be there if you wanted to pick up petitions or sign. I didn't know anyone, so I'm writing down names and email addresses, trying to make sure I didn't lose any of the sheets. I don't know anybody, so who knows, maybe these are the people that are friends with the people that are there. I don't know. So as I'm manning the table, an older gentleman with a fantastically wonderful large white beard pulls up, rolls down his window, and he says, "Do you know who I am?" No, because I didn't. I was like, "No." And he said, "My name's Dan Saper, and I wrote that law that gives you the ability to do that." I was like, "Great, thank you, I guess." So he left, and that happened to me a few times, actually, where people would say, "Do you know who I am?" I didn't. I honestly didn't. I didn't have any idea who anybody was. So, come to find out, Dan Saper was a fixture in Kingston. He had run a local paper for decades. He'd served on boards and committees, Board of Health, just everybody knew who he was. So because I knew no one, I think it was actually an advantage to both me and the recall. No one knew who I was. So I came to the table with no history. No one had any preconceived notions. When I stood shoulder to shoulder to the most well-known liberal and conservative people in the town, people paid attention. If these people, who are seemingly so different, can come together, it must be important. And I mean literally shoulder to shoulder, because this was like January of 2020, so COVID wasn't a thing yet. On February 18th, 2020, after spending 21 days collecting over 2,000 signatures in all kinds of weather, all over the town clerk certified the receipt of 134 signature sheets for the petitions to recall 2 of our selectmen. On Thursday, February 27th, 2020, our Board of Registrars completed the certification that we had enough signatures to trigger a recall election. The flyering and the door knocking continued. There were Facebook posts and interviews and many, many, many phone calls. On election day, we had crowds holding pro-recall signs. Excuse me. It's not COVID, I promise. All day long, and we had countless people telling us this was the first time they'd ever voted in an annual town election. In fact, many people said they registered to vote just to be able to vote in favor of the recall. By the end of the day, the results were clear. In a town with a turnout typically around 1,200, over 2,700 people voted in the recall election. 57% of voters voted in favor of recalling both selectmen, and 58% of voters cast their vote in favor of the alternatives. Myself and the beloved lifelong Kingston resident, Vietnam vet, retired Kingston police officer, and former member of Capital Planning, Board of Health, former selectman, Dick Aruda. We pulled him back in. My 75-year-old buddy. So our recall election also took place on the same day as our annual election. So not only did the recalls succeed, a longtime selectman was unseated with someone new, leaving one sitting selectman in place, the only pro-recall selectman. The 5th selectman was not mentioned because she resigned a month prior to the election. So we held a special election to fill her seat. 2 candidates came forward to pull papers, and both were in what was then called the recall group. As of August 2020, the board was a full 5 members and was entirely from the recall group. I can say now in hindsight that our success was a combination of a number of variables, creating the perfect storm for a successful recall. First, the primary issue was relatable to the masses. For us, the greatest concern was not being able to have a voice at the table. People felt they weren't being heard or listened to by those who were elected to represent them. Second, we tried our best to stay away from negativity. We consistently talked about how people wanted to be able to speak their minds and ask questions and get responses, and encouraged others to stay away from personal attacks and negativity. Third, we had a core group of people who were willing to work long days and nights throughout the recall and leading up to and through the election. Just so you know, my mom was like, is this over yet? Turns out 2 years later, it's not over yet. We were able to maximize people's strengths. We had a few people who were great at live streaming on Facebook and keeping social media up to date. We had someone who could develop a website, which has now since been retired. There's no need 2 years later to relive all of that, so it's been put to bed. We had people who wrote letters to local newspapers, others who were willing to knock on doors, flyer neighborhoods. I wasn't a door knocker myself, I preferred the flyering, but to each their own. We had people who were perfectly happy to sit at the transfer station, the grocery store, the post office, the library, or anywhere that there was an opportunity to talk to people, explain what we were doing, and ask for signatures to get the question on the ballot. In addition, we checked the signatures, which I think is a crucial piece of this, because they did send people to sign fake signatures with fake addresses. So without checking that, we could have submitted and failed. So we checked against the recent voter registration list to ensure that we had more than enough signatures to trigger a recall election before we submitted a single page of signatures to the town clerk for verification. He wasn't happy to see us that day. The stack of papers was like this thick. Fourth, we had a broad group of people involved. When it came to recall supporters, we probably had more differences than we had similarities, but we had one thing in common. We wanted our representatives to represent us. We combined the known, we combined the known and the unknown, the new with the old, sorry, Nikki. The candidates that we put forth to replace the seated selectmen were very different. As I mentioned, we had the beloved Dickie, lifelong resident of Kingston, who served many, many capacities, as I mentioned, and then me, who moved there all of 5 seconds before. Didn't know anybody, never did anything. With that combination, we had someone people already knew and trusted, standing next to someone they were happy to meet, as the people of Kingston were ready for a change. So where does that leave us today? After completing the prior selectman's term, I ran uncontested in 2021 and was re-elected to a 3-year term. Is our current board universally liked? Does everyone agree with all of our decisions? I doubt it. However, I can tell you that people are heard during our meetings. We are available outside of meetings. People call, text, email, even drop by my house. I was speaking with someone the other day about elected officials generally, who said that people are elected to powerful positions can lose themselves in the power that they have. But I would argue there's a difference between power and representation. As a member of the Board of Selectmen, I'm merely one of 5. My one vote means nothing. When you combine it with others, then they make a difference. And it is my job to represent the people of my community and listen to what they have to say and get the answers to their questions. The way I see it, this isn't my anything. It's our town. A recall is a last resort. Not only do people not want to be recalled, no one wants to have to let it get that far. But not only is it possible, unfortunately, sometimes it's necessary. To all of you, my neighbors here in Pembroke and other communities, I hope you're able to find a path to work collaboratively. I hope you can work with one another and your current sitting officials for the betterment of your town. However, if you can't, and you should need to pursue a recall, I have no doubt that it can be done, because as you know, it's been done before. Oh, yes. I recommend on Spotify, if you listen to a podcast called Crown Town, it kind of highlights a lot of the recall journey that we went through and some of the history in Kingston. So if you're familiar with anyone in Kingston, you hear some familiar voices. Is that what you?
I am.
Okay.
That's what I refer to.
And now.
Thank you so much. I'm very thankful for Kim in a special way. Here's how a conversation with Kim begins. Hey Don, this is Kim. You're wrong. No, I'm sorry. And just yesterday, the kind of bravado that she has, she nailed me on something that I was gibbering about. And it was very clear to her I didn't know what I was saying. And it became very clear to me, and I had to check out, and she was exactly right with respect to our recall petition. We've been spared hours, days, and weeks in light of just that kind of advice that she's given to us. Listen to that podcast series. It is fantastic. It is phenomenal. We'll put it on the Pembroke Rising website so that you can connect with it. Thank you, Kim. Very, very, very good job. Thank you so much. Two fantastic presentations, don't you think? They really have been. I thank God for these people that just crossed my path and have shot adrenaline into my soul. And this is a matter of people speaking. That's all that's happening in Pembroke Rising. One of the things that has affected me most dramatically here in Pembroke is the story that Melissa Pinnetti has shared with us at town meeting. Not being present, her dad, Norm Pichet, read that. If anybody watched that at town meeting, were you there? Did you see it? This was drama extraordinaire. Melissa now is here with us to tell her story of encountering DEI, CRT in the school system and the price that one family can pay. Melissa, thank you for being with us.
Hello, Pembroke. It's good to be back. I was raised in Pembroke, where my parents built our home 40 years ago. I spent many years training and employed at the world's top psychiatric institution as a forensic psychiatric social worker, and have served some of the most vulnerable citizens in the U.S. and from abroad. I am no stranger to diversity, culture, and stigma. With that said, Pembroke is at a cultural and political crossroads, and Pembroke's children are the undoubted focus of a dangerous ideology. As Pembroke prepares to choose its leaders, it is imperative you hear our family's story. While anecdotal, I assure you we are one of a vast pool of parents with similar stories. Many have reached out to us. My career saw me leave Pembroke. In search of a town with a strong educational system, I purchased a home in Canton, Massachusetts. A couple of years back, the town established a DEI committee for the purpose of advising, under a mission similar to that presented by the Pembroke Select Board for its own DEI endeavor. Before long, the committee began advising the schools. Quickly, all weekly newsletters from the principal and teacher professional trainings were of race and gender-obsessed topics. Leftist politics were rampantly wound into the curriculum. Our nightmare began in my daughter's 8th grade health class last year, when the young teacher opted to introduce her belief that Black Lives Matter, the organization, was the target of hate crimes. My daughter, a child who maintains friends of many races and enjoys racial diversity within her own family,
raised her hand and politely shared her view that she saw BLM as a group that was perpetuating violent riots in cities across the United States. Rather than encouraging her ability to think critically and to bravely disagree, she was overtly shamed by the teacher in front of the class. She was then followed onto the school bus by 2 students and video recorded while they verbally abused and intimidated her for her statement in class, calling her a racist, a homophobe, and disgusting. The videos were then disseminated on social media. She was exposed to verbal abuse in hallways and classrooms for months. She was challenged to a fist fight. She lost all but one brave friend. The last straw was drawn when some boys shared a nude photo on social media claiming it was her. It was not. With police involvement, we chose to pull her from the school and finish the year via remote learning. Her emotional torment was heartbreaking. My husband and I had multiple meetings with the school administration over these many months. Let me share with you what the DEI agenda flooding our school systems looks like. My daughter was given a safe person. This staff member was an ardent and overt BLM and DEI supporter on social media. When I complained, she was given another safe person. This staff member had a picture of George Floyd taped to his door at the school, as if this was a person our children should look up to and seek to emulate. While the majority of the perpetrators were students of color, the only one to receive punishment was a white girl. We were told these actions did not violate bullying or harassment policies because she was not, quote, part of a protected class, end quote. When we questioned how such behavior could be considered anything but harassment, the vice principal stated in a multi-person meeting that, quote, unfortunately, white girls and white boys don't have the same rights, end quote. Our daughter, a kind, straight-A student athlete, was unable to attend her 8th grade promotion as a result, only to learn later through documents sent to her by the school principal that the 2 initial bullies were chosen by the administration as the student speakers at the promotion ceremony. After 5 months of bullying and thousands of dollars in attorney's fees, we received the hard-fought results of the Title IX investigation we requested to examine the multitude of abuses against our daughter in relation to the law. Our fight with the school system was not totally in vain. The investigator and superintendent acknowledged that under the law, our daughter had been bullied, and that it was severe enough to impact her ability to receive her education and the school's ability to operate as usual. Interestingly, while they agreed our daughter had been bullied, they stated that they could not confirm that there were any actual bullies for them to sanction. Odd, but they had an agenda to protect. You should also know that school administrators are granted sovereign immunity, tying our hands from filing lawsuits for their refusal to protect our child while in the building and causing her clear and documented harm. While our story is just one, once our story became public, parents began reaching out from Canton, as well as neighboring towns, to express similar experiences, all swept under the rug by local school administrators. The message is clear. Until a crime is committed, like we have all followed in Loudoun County, our children are at the mercy of these ideologues and their complicity in silence while our children are abused and taught to hate. The DEI agenda is a pervasive, toxic ideology that ultimately pits children against children. Instead of focusing on academics or how to be a generally good person, kids are taught now to evaluate each other based on narrow-minded identity checkboxes. The words diversity, equity, and inclusion sound warm, designed as such to be irrefutable by any decent person, but our family promises you, the results are anything but, and the words are a facade. Everything I have shared here tonight can be verified with videos, documents, and audio recordings. Pembroke must resist the suburban identity politics and stay true to itself. A small town of hardworking, good people who are plenty capable of demonstrating solid character and neighborly love to members of any group without the government further imposing this toxicity in our lives and in our schools. Know where your candidates stand relative to these agendas. Our children's well-being is at stake.
I think one of the responses that we all have, I mean, even if we suspect things, is, really? Really? is this happening really? There's only one answer to that.
Yes.
It is happening. It's subtle. It's not what you see. People are intimidated. They're not going to talk about it. Just being on the inside of some things in the DEI petition, I'll talk about that in a moment, that we led. The number of people who have come up to me in our town said, if I speak up, do you know what's going to happen to me? In our town. This is a wonderful place to live. We've lived all over the country. And Pembroke is home to us. This is where we belong. And one of the reasons it is that way to us is the wonderful people of all kinds that we've met. And now we're being told, we got it wrong. We got it wrong. And we have a group set apart to constantly tell us how wrong we got it. And the price that these dear people that have shared with you already are paying for saying, no, no. You'll pay a price. We can't ask, we can't demand that there be no price to being courageous. We can't spare a person that moment. But what we can do, and this is what Pembroke Rising is all about, is you can find a voice. You can find a network. You can find people who put steel in your spine and help you endure. And there can be a soft landing when you work through your convictions, because in Pembroke, there's a place you can go and you know who they are. The flag has been raised, the people have stood up, and I believe not the only group, not only the only network. Pembroke Rising is one of those places to go. Now, here's the question. Where do you go when these things hit you? Do you call up a select board member? Good luck.
They can call me, but I'm not going to call.
Present company accepted. Now, I know these people on our committees and on our board. I know them. They are friends of mine. By name. We eat together, we live life together, we socialize together, we do jobs together that matter. But somehow in the midst of all of that, something very dark is rolling in and people are confused. Now, how did I get there? How did it start? I want to tell you just a little bit, and then I'm going to switch gears. And the next gear is what you can do. Now, Pembroke Rising, in my mind, having been around you, and you and others, such a unique group of people, Pembroke Rising is Pembroke Rising. It's not me rising, it's not the leadership rising, for whatever leadership we're giving. It's just people with ears to the ground saying, the town is saying something. The town is saying something. And we give a megaphone. And we give heart. We give love to people who are suffering because of the resistance to what they're going through. I'm a pastor. I've been a pastor for 41 years. Before I retired when I was 65. I'm 72 now. I retired at 65. That was a good time for us for all kinds of good reasons. But I'd invested my life with suffering people. That was my job. That's what I did. The community of good-hearted, loving, sincere, courageous people that I've met has overwhelmed my soul. These are the best people I've ever met along the way. And in the dirty business of politics. Can you believe it? Some of you know what I'm talking about. People who stand up, people who have courage, people who act out of their own convictions, and though nobody follows, and though nobody's ahead of them, they still do it. And being around those people and what they're doing set an example for me. What I found out in a local town It's so easy to do this at the state level and at the federal level, where I vote for candidates. But at a state, at a local level, I am the solution. You are the solution. Yeah, I can vote this or that or the other, but I live in the context. And I know what's going on, and that means I become part of the solution. And that's what Pembroke Rising is about. You're the solution. You're the voice. What woke me up, and I am woke in a whole different way, was a year and a half ago, 2 summers ago this summer. I don't know how I came across it. And some of you are familiar with this. I saw a social media post by one of our select board members. And it went like this, in quotes. Had one commentator talk to us being likely to be afraid of black people at night in Brockton. And this is a white select board member in Pembroke. Read it again. Had one commentator talk about us being likely to be afraid of black people at night in Brockton. I am afraid of white guys with guns in Pembroke. We go, what? A select board member said that? You're out of town? I said, honey, I'm white. I'm a gun owner. Is this real? I had to follow up on it. I'm a gun owner. My wife's a gun owner. My 2 sons are gun owners. We are white. Not by choice of my own. And I'm a male, not by choice of my own.
Today it is.
So I went before the select board and asked that member, why are you afraid of me? Are you afraid of Don Bryant? You know, of course, what the answer is. They're afraid of a class of people. And that's the poison. That's the poison. I've had people be afraid of me because actually I deserve that kind of response sometimes. But to be afraid of me as a class, that's something you can't fight. It's a wet blanket that's put upon your soul. So I confronted that and asked for the select board member's censure, if not resignation from the select board, for, as a lawyer, taking a clear position, what I consider to be against our Second Amendment rights, and putting fear in people about something that was their right in our country. Well, it wasn't long before our select board chair started posting as well. In quotes, I am not a fan of anyone who is pro-life, pro-Second Amendment, and anti-kneeling. Why would somebody say that? I mean, you can believe it, but you're select board, right? And from there on, some very devastating posts about the town that most of you live in, Pembroke. Small town white people are not okay, and it makes them dangerous to our government. What are we going to do?
I have an idea.
And from then on, the select board built momentum for a full tidal wave of woke ideology. You know the story. What is now the destabilization of our chief governing body in Pembroke, which is our select board. The rancor, the accusations against our town as racist, unwelcoming, unkind, and ungrateful for others who would make them more diverse. I witnessed the insistence on this agenda with the majority of the select board members voting for a DEI committee. It became clear to me that citizen input was not welcome and dialogue was tamped down by those in power. It was time to act. Thus, the DEI petition, right, that we launched. We only had 1 week. Had to get 100 signatures to get on the special town meeting in the fall. We got it. Online, they're saying to us, those who oppose us, they'll never get it. There aren't that many people in Pembroke who would sign that. In a week, we just gave the sheets out to people and they went to their neighbors. We gathered enough, we needed 100, we got 174 in a week, and we were on the ballot. And then it all hit the fan. And in a good way, we need to have that discussion together. If the select board's not gonna have it, we need to have it. And we did. And we had the second largest town meeting in Pembroke history. It was an extraordinary moment. It was scary, actually, because you could feel the energy and you could feel the nervousness, but it was good. And the town had their say. And the petition was to advise the select board to withdraw their support for the establishment of a DEI committee. We won that fight in town meeting. It was a non-binding petition, which I wanted it to be. Because to me, it wasn't about force. It wasn't about we're the law and we're going to force you to do. We want the discussion. That's all we want, the discussion. We got it. And we won by majority vote. The select board went ahead and passed and seated the DEI committee even over town vote, which is very unwise even if it was non-binding. And the reason for voting for it, according to a couple of our select board members, certainly one, supported by two at least, they could ignore the council of the town. They thought, because since we are racists, and minority views could not be adequately represented at town meeting, because minority people are afraid to go to a predominantly white town meeting, it was the select board's job to represent people who did not show up and did not vote. And so now our select board is representing people who did not show up and did not vote, and now the select board was going to make that right. I was stunned. What am I going to do? What are we going to do? Thus Pembroke Rising. And the people that God put together, very unique group of people, to actually begin to work and to think and to interact, and let me believe you, at least in my count, to pray. We began to say to ourselves, they're out there. They're out there. Meaning you. But they need to connect with one another. Where else would you go? After the heavy hand of the select board, how could you create critical mass for worthy views that you cannot count on politicians to represent? So here we go. The vision is that Pembroke Rising does not speak for you. Pembroke Rising lets you speak. And here's our mission statement. Pembroke Rising is a positive, read that, loving. Even when it's stern truth, loving, with the intent to prosper people and enable them to flourish and to live their lives well. Pembroke Rising is a positive, nonpartisan movement, giving a voice and a network to Pembroke residents who support historical American ideals and to families who value the future of their children. That's it. That's what we do. Ken and Norm, I have some sheets here that I would like passed around. Could you guys help do that? And maybe Vince, you could help as well. We don't have enough copies to have, forgive me, I was a little fake. But it's on our website and it's on our Facebook page. As that's being passed around, we've said some hard things tonight, right? And people have said some hard things. I want to make clear, And I've got this quote on my desk. It regularly appears to me so I can be reminded. We want to be honest with people. But the man who is brutally honest enjoys the brutality quite as much as the honesty, and possibly even more. We've got to make sure that that's not what we're doing. Honesty, not brutality. And not enjoying fights, engaging discussions. There are 4 people who serve on our service team. Call it leadership, executive committee, whatever you want, you know. Myself, Vince Cogliano, and Mark and Karen Ames, right here. We're 4. We were communicating with a wider group of people, but it became clear that this was a movement of which there is no membership. What they chose to do is say, you guys run with this and do your thing, and God be with you. See you around. No, they're on the team. But they gave us the mission, and we're sharing it with you. And you can see here, let me get my sheet. I'm not going to go over these 10. They're there for you to read for yourself, but if you've noticed it, they're verbs. To provide, to encourage, to recall, to raise awareness, to protect, to assist, to revise, to promote, and to inform. That's our job. We're just beginning. You're just beginning in this mission. We have some ways for people to be involved. You have some sheets on your tables. We're going to ask people who want to help one another, not us, one another. We're going to put together several mission groups that will connect with the movement. One of them is to keep watchful and alert eyes on DEI, particularly the DEI committee here in Pembroke. We want people to see it, to study it, and to know it, to be aware. Go to the meetings. Be on the web, be on the Zoom meetings. They've had one meeting, one Zoom meeting. They'll have another one February the 28th. It is Monday. It will be announced on our website and on our Pembroke Rising Facebook page. But we need a group of people who are helping other people understand and would invest that kind of time. The other one is to enlist on the distribution team. You know what a distribution team is? That's a fancy word for, right? My feet hurt. That's the kind of people we need. We want to get the word out. Do you know why? Because I don't know what percentage of people, 75% of the people of Pembroke don't know that you exist, don't know a select board exists, don't know a town clerk exists. You know what? They're living life as it was sort of meant to be. And they don't want to be bothered. But something's happening. And so we need people that will help us get out the message. It's not just walking knocking on doors. It's literature distribution. It's social media. It's a team that says, we want to get the word out. And the other one is to track and to be aware of what's happening in our schools. This is not being aware and tracking the school committee. They are elected representatives. You voted for them, by the way. Whoever's on that school committee. Doesn't mean you're satisfied. Doesn't mean the job's always as you would please or whatever. But it's not just about that. It's being aware. Curriculum. I've had people run down the street waving information from the Pembroke schools and saying, how did this get to my child? Where did this come from? I don't want my child reading that kind of book. Who assigned that book? Where did it come from? We need people who are in the loop, who are aware and feeding information. The other side is doing that. Other people are doing that in their way, and quite frankly, they have the leverage of government. They have the leverage of bureaucracy, of the system. We're the citizens. We're the ones that ultimately call the shots. And it will only happen if we let it happen. That's all. And it's about you being back in charge. So you can sign up on that sheet. We're still on the website. You can always contact us. You don't have to do it tonight, but if you want to put down your email, we'll be in touch with you on a specific item that's there. You say, this is my bird, I'd like to focus here. We'd love to put together these teams. The one thing that's significant, or not one, but it's one of many, but it's right here, is the petition to change the recall provision for Pembroke. Now, if you were looking at the select board meetings, come on, admit it. Do ya? Oh no, I have this satellite. I can't watch it even if I wanted to, or whatever. Oh yeah, I did that.
Riveting stuff too.
Right.
Riveting stuff.
If you look at that, you begin to see the perking up of the recall petition. We have, and I've asked it to be on the select board agenda. You know what? They said yes. We'll do that. You know, right? They did that. And then they announced the first meeting that 3 of the 5 are against any recall provision change at all. I said, well, I want to say, well, wait a minute. I haven't started. And then 2 said nothing at all. But one select board member said, you know what? We should table this until an advocate has an opportunity to present their case. Kept it open. So that's what we're going to do, is we're going to present it to them. And if you, back to my point, if you watch the select board meeting not too long ago, when they discussed this issue of a recall provision, it was basically said, this is no big deal. I mean, people, it's easy. You know, nothing hard here.
I take offense to that.
What's that?
I take offense to that.
I know. It might be a little bit of a high bar, but it's no issue. And I contend, and I will present, it's virtually impossible to have a recall here in Pembroke, and here's the reason. The recall requires in Pembroke that you get 20% of registered voters to sign. That's 2,800 people. Now, first, that was what you faced in Kingston. I looked in the surrounding towns around here. We require 20%. Marshfield requires 5%. Noel Hanson required 10%. Stoughton requires 15% in terms of registered voters. We also only have, 14 days here to get it done. Kim studied all of our stuff, so she knows more about it than I do.
You had 21 days, to be fair. You have 14.
Okay, 14. Well, the other towns, how much time do they have? 21, 30 days, whatever. We got a pretty strict code here, but I get it, you know. But the real issue is for a recall election, should we get the signatures, to actually be on the ballot and then voted on. The town of Pembroke requires 40% of all the registered voters in town to show up. Do you know how, that's right. That's what I'm saying, this is never going to happen. And it has never happened in Pembroke. Never. So what we're doing is a revision to take those numbers down to something that's rational, reasonable, and in keeping with our surrounding communities. I think, and the select board has said to me, we will hear. And I've asked them better to work with us. It's in your, if you're for justice or equity, if you're for equity, then you will be on the side of the change. because this is simply unjust. So you're going to be hearing news about that, and the next steps will be evident. Now, we're closing now.
You've got Wendy.
I did. Well, I know I'm past 8, but we changed it without you knowing.
If you're only the timekeeper, why do you need to know?
You didn't get it.
We're closing now. I'm going to ask Wendy Heppel to be here with me. Wendy is a very special person. My life began to change when I got a notice about this thing called South Shore Grassroots Alliance. Some of you know that at all? Yeah, whoa. I said, okay, I'll go. It's a good thing I'm doing it at grassroots. And I walked in and there were 300 people.
This is too shabby.
I said, what is going on? And then we went to the Motherload group. And what's happening here is happening all across the South Shore and across Massachusetts. And I just want Wendy to give us a greeting as we close.
Thank you. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
My name is Wendy Happel. I am from Abington. Thank you. I'm also actually on school training in Abington. I've been on since 2015. I am the chair for the past 2 years. I'm sure that's going to change in April. They're pretty done with me, the rest of the people on it. That's okay. I got through the tough last couple of years, so that's what really matters. So there was a bunch of us parents that got together. It was actually originally the Abington Against Mandates page. I know a lot of towns have them. We started meeting other people from other towns, Marshfield and Hanover and Pembroke, and so we're like, okay, how do we connect this so that we're just bigger, and that way we get more people connected, and we're able to get to more events, and just more knowledge is power, right? So we decided to come up with the South Shore Grassroots Alliance. If you're not on the page on Facebook, please join us. If you are on Telegram, we're on there. We also have a website. So Grassroots, we're in it for basically everything. It's not just like anti-mask or anti-vaccines. It's the bias training, which, by the way, check out your MIAA forms for signing up for athletics, because it is all over that right now. I actually just went to sign my daughter up and found it, and I called my superintendent and AD, had it taken off because it is a pilot program. If something says must do it, you don't have to do it. Only thing that your kids have to do is take the 10th grade MCAS in order to graduate. So other than that, you still own your kids, so make sure that if you don't want to take it, if you want to take it, fine. But it's an hour course and it takes a lot out of the kids. So make sure that you just look and see what's going on. So, like I said, grassroots, it's a lot more than just the anti-mandate. So, we're going to keep this going. We're supporting politicians that support what we want. So, Ken Sweezy's and the Donnie Palmers and, whoever, please, what I ask you, if you're not going to run for office, stand behind somebody that is. Help them. They need it. If you really want to make change, and if you can't be the one that's, going to get yourself out there, you need to help the people in your community and across the state that are going to help make this change. Otherwise, we're just going to stay in the same position that we're in. So tonight, before you all leave, I know it's hot in here, I'm dying, sorry. But I really urge you and I ask you to go around and talk to some of these people. I just met Donnie a couple of times recently, and I wish I knew him prior to that, because we've, in the past when we had our events, we had politicians speak. So I think it's really good to get to know a little bit of each side. So, get yourselves out there. I really appreciate y'all coming out tonight. This has been great. Thank you for having us. I love meeting Dawn and all our new friends. We've met so many people and really had a great connection. So thank you for everybody that spoke tonight as well.
Okay, folks, we're done. Thank you for being here. Sign on your papers. And by the way, I need to say to Adam Jadudas, is that how you pronounce your last name? Jadudas. Thank you for your work on the Board of Health. We honor you. Good night.
The governing body.
So So why don't you just cut the funding? Why don't you just cut the funding?
There's no funding. That's already, they have no budget, but they're going to end that.